everybody, I'm Bede, Jermyn, a.k.a. the Terrible Australian of Super Podcast, and welcome to the very first edition of my 2013 Melbourne International Film Festival video reviews. Now, if you saw my video reviews last year, you would already know that for MIFF last year, I decided to do video reviews for all the films that I saw at the festival. So I decided to do that again this year. So if you saw those videos last year, you'll know what to expect. So for the next few weeks, I'm going to be doing a sort of talking about my thoughts and reviews on all the films that I saw at the festival. Last year I saw 17 films, but for this year I decided to check out 23 films. So there's a lot more films to discuss this year. So for this very first installment, I'm going to be talking about the first two films that I saw at the festival this year, which is the new Australian crime drama mystery film Mystery Road, and as well as the Sundance period crime drama Ain't Them Bodies Saints. So let's begin. First off, I'll talk about Mystery Road. But this time though, I tend not to really. I should express before I get on with the reviews, I've decided for my video reviews this year that I'm not going to actually, I will say what each of the films are about, but instead of trying to describe it on my own what they are, because I tend to butcher what the plots are, I've decided, with the help of the lovely MIFF festival viewing guide, I'm going to pretty much say what the plots of these films are from the magazine, because they do a much better job at expressing what the plots are than I can. So first up is Mystery Road, and the plot for this film is Detective Jay Swan, Aaron Peterson, returns to the outback town in which he grew up to investigate the murder of an Indigenous teen. After years away, Swan feels alienated from the community and his daughter, but when he discovers that there's a serial killer at large, they'll all have to work together. What I would have to say, that Mystery Road was a pretty solid start for the festival. I don't think it's an amazing film. I think it's a pretty solid film. Like, I know it's sort of getting a lot of love from a lot of people at the moment, but I thought at the moment it's a pretty solid film. But one of the reasons why I wanted to check it out, besides the fact that it's only being shown once at the festival, is the fact that it's the new film from Australian director Ivan Sen, who about 10 years ago directed this really good Australian film that I liked called Beneath Clouds. And he's made two other films since then, but I haven't had a chance to see those ones, but I was really excited to see this one. And I have to say, it is, like I said, it's a pretty solid crime drama mystery. It's not entirely original. It is kind of predictable. You kind of know exactly where the story is going to go. But at the same time, it's a very quiet film, and what really surprised me the most about the film is that there's not much. Like, there is a score, but it's not used at all. It's only used for a few moments in the movie. So it's basically, there's no music at all during the film. But it does have a really good sense of atmosphere and mood about it. And I will say this though, even though it's not the most original film, it's very well directed. It looks stunning. Like, Ivan Sen, who, besides writing the film, he also was the film's cinematographer and editor. And the cinematography in this film is just absolutely stunning, because the screening I went to was a HD digital screening, so it just looks spectacular on the big screen, and I would definitely recommend everyone to check this film out on the biggest screen you can, because it looked fantastic. And watching this film, I can definitely see that the Coen brothers film No Country for Old Men was definitely a major influence on this film, based on both the tone and the visual look, and it definitely had my interest as a viewer. And another reason why I think this film, at least, was really good to me was the performances from the cast. Peterson, who's an Aboriginal actor. He's sort of one of those actors who I've seen in a lot of films and TV shows over the years, and this is sort of like, I guess and it was really cool to see him in sort of this really big major leading role where he gets to show off his talents, and he's really good, and he definitely, it's a very subtle performance, but he does have a lot of presence. But he's basically our point of view throughout this whole film, because we're seeing everything from his eyes, and he does it really well. He has like I said, he has a great presence about him on screen. You definitely are invested into his character. I would have liked to have a bit more insight into his character though, because I feel like there are a lot of things that the film touches on when it comes to his character, because he was a man who lived in this community and wanted to get out and do something better with his life. So he went to the big city, became a detective, and then come back. But being sort of really the only Aboriginal detective in the small town, his fellow officers still kind of still look down on him and don't really take anything he says as seriously. And even the Aboriginal community itself kind of reject him as well, because he's kind of represents the thing that they don't like, and because he and I thought that was a really interesting aspect, and the movie really touches on that extremely well, and it does it in a very subtle way, which I really appreciated. I would have liked to have seen it gone a little bit further with that, but for what it is, it's done pretty well. But besides him, like, everyone in the cast is great. Like, everyone does very well in their roles, and some are only in it for like one scene. The film's got Hugo Weaving, Jack Thompson, Bruce Spence, Ryan Quanten, Tasma Walton, Damien Walsh Howling, and many more. And every single one of them are all really good in their roles. But for me, the standouts, of course, being Hugo Weaving, who's always great in everything he does. Jack Thompson, who's only in the film for one scene, and also Tasma Walton, who I thought she did a really terrific job playing Jay's ex. And so yeah, it was the performances, the direction, and the cinematography were all really good. But I feel like the script could have gone further with it, because, like I said, it's pretty predictable. You kind of know where the story is going to go, even though it sort of still keeps your interest anyway. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, something a bit more, a little bit more could have done with the script, because, and also another thing that sort of did bother me about the film is that it's a very slow paced film. It's a definition of a slow burn thriller, but at the same time, I feel like that its slow pace actually works against it a bit, because there were a few moments where I did feel like the movie kind of dragged a bit, and I started to get a little impatient. And the movie only goes for 2 hours, and maybe if it was maybe trimmed by maybe 10 minutes or so, it probably would have been a much more tighter film. But even though I was a bit put off by the pacing at first, but it still held my interest right away. But also at the same time, there was another thing that sort of did bother me about the film. Another sort of major reason why it stopped it from being a great film is that it is a bit repetitive, because basically the film is just, for most part, is the character of Jay just going around interviewing people and finding out what happened to this young girl who was murdered. And it happens a lot of times during the film, and it does get it was a bit too repetitive for my taste. And we never really, and it does sort of lack insight into the characters, but I think it's really the actors themselves who give a lot to these roles and make them better than they are. But one thing I will say, though, that I really loved about the film was the climax, which was just handled superbly, and it's definitely one of the best scenes in the film. I'm not going to say what it's about or what happens in that scene, but it was just great. It really was a great climax for the film. So overall, Mystery Road, it's a solid film. I don't think it's a great film by any means necessarily, but for what it is, it's solid. It's compelling, and it's very well acted, and it's beautiful to look at. So I'd recommend it. If you love Australian films as much as I do, it's definitely worth checking out. So if I had to give this a rating out of 5, I give it a solid 3.5. Now on to Ain't Them Body Saints, which, with the help of the booklet, is about outlaw couple Bob Muldoon, Casey Affleck, and Ruth Guthrie, Rooney Mara, find their crime spree at an abrupt end when they surrender after wounding a cop, Ben Foster, in a shootout. 4 years later, Bob escapes from prison to search for Ruth and their daughter Sylvie, born after their arrest. Along the way, his past starts to catch up with him. Now, out of the films that I was seeing at the festival this year, this was one that this was definitely one of my most anticipated films, because I heard a lot of great things about it when it premiered at Sundance this year. I heard really great things about it, and sort of based on seeing the trailer and also the plot, and also the hearing what the film's writer-director David Lowery said about it, it sort of reminded me a lot of Terrence Malick's terrific first film, Badlands. And in a way, I've sort of nicknamed this film after Badlands, because it's almost like, if you forget what the actual ending of Badlands is like, it almost feels like a continuation of that, like almost what happens after that film, even though it possibly couldn't happen because of what actually happens at the end of Badlands. But you know, that's a whole different story altogether. But yeah, so I was definitely really intrigued to check it out, and I was definitely looking forward to seeing it. But after watching it, I have to be honest, I found it really disappointing. Like, it had all the elements there that I expected it to have, and all those elements are good, but it just really failed to engage me as a viewer. And I think the first thought that I thought of after watching it was, this is a film where the sum of its parts are better than the whole, and that line just sums up the entire film. It's a true mixed bag of a film. It really just didn't engage me. I wasn't bored, it was watchable, but it never really connected to me on both a storytelling or an emotional level. And I was just sort of sitting there waiting for it to engage me in some way, but it just didn't happen at all. And I think the main reason is the first act of the film, which is the first 15 minutes, is the beginning of the film, is the shootout scene, and what led the characters of Bob and Ruth to that shootout, and the sort of what led them to the crime, what led them to a life of crime, and then the shootout, and them getting arrested. That entire first 15 minutes felt very rushed and disjointed, and I guess because of that, it just didn't get me as a viewer, and if not, it just made me feel like it just pushed me at a distance to really connect with the story or the characters. And I'm not sure why that is, because I have heard that the director David Lowery actually went back and re-edited the film after Sundance, so I'm not sure if the cut we had at the festival was the Sundance cut or the final cut, so I don't know whether it's what everyone saw at this. It was the cut that was shown at Sundance was a much better cut, and this one and the new cut sort of compromised the film. I'm not sure, but yeah, I feel like, and yeah, because after that third act, I just never really got into the film at all, and it just did not captivate me. And I was waiting for it, like I said, I was waiting for it to do that, but in the end, it just failed to do that. But even though it didn't captivate me, there are elements of it that I really liked. I think the performances from everyone in the film is really good. Casey Affleck is fine, although I wish he didn't. Tended to mumble a lot during some scenes, so it was hard to decipher what he was actually saying most of the time. So, but he was fine. But surprisingly, the performance that really surprised me the most, and in my opinion was just absolutely excellent was, believe it or not, Rooney Mara. I'm not the biggest. I haven't really taken the Rooney Mara at all. I thought, like, ever since I thought she was dull in A Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, I thought she was dull in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake, and she was fine in Side Effects, but I just never took to her performance that at all in that film, and I still to this and at the and I thought her best role so far in her career was actually a small role in The Social Network. So I didn't know what to expect in her performance wise, but she just blew me away in this film. She was absolutely fantastic. She was just amazing. I loved her performance. She brought so much to her role and her character. And she's not the only one. Ben Foster, who plays the cop that she wounded, and who Bob in the film took the blame for so she wouldn't go to jail. Ben Foster, he's terrific as well. It's a beautifully layered and very subtle performance from him, and it's amazing that because the last couple of years Foster has been sort of playing a lot of crazy roles, so it was really nice to see him go back to something that's a bit more subtle. And he was terrific as well, and his relationship with Rooney Mara's character was definitely was definitely one of the aspects of the movie that I did find at least a little bit compelling, and at least kept me invested with the film. And also Keith Carradine, he's also great as well. I really liked his performance and his sort of relationship with both Bob and Ruth. And I kind of feel like the movie never really explored that enough for my liking. Like there are, like I said, at times the film can be a bit muddled in terms of the relationships with some of the characters and also the story. And I kind of wish that the film explored that a lot more. Um, but definitely another aspect, but there are other aspects besides the performances I did like. The movie looks great. It was a bit murky, but I'm not sure whether that was the actual film itself or maybe how it was projected. But other than that, it looked great. I can definitely see a Terrence Malick vibe while watching this film. Malick was definitely a huge influence on this film. The film looked great. The production slash costumes and designs was very authentic. The score was absolutely beautiful and haunting, and it is pretty solidly directed by David Lowery, I think this is his very first film. I could be wrong, so don't yell at me for that. But his direction is pretty solid, but it's really his script that's less to be desired. But overall, yeah, overall, like maybe it was just too high expectations for me, but yeah, like maybe it's just me. Maybe a lot of people out there will get a lot more out of Ain't Them Body Saints than I did. So you don't have to take my word for it. But for me personally, it just didn't. Even though there were a lot of things I did like about it, overall, in the end, it just didn't really work for me. So if I had to give this film a rating, I would give it a 2.5. So yeah, I was that disappointed by it. It's yeah. So there you go. That's the end of my first edition of my my MIFF video reviews. Keep a lookout very soon for my second edition, in which it's a bit of a horror special, that one, because I'll be talking about the critically acclaimed home invasion horror film You're Next, and as well as the remake of the 1978 Aussie horror classic Patrick. So keep a lookout for those, and I'll see you soon. See you, everyone.